Good morning and welcome back to Classical Mechanics 1, Lecture 4, 30th September 2021. Yeah, so I have a couple of organizational things to mention. One is that I am happy that many of you submitted the first assignment. And please follow the convention of naming your submission file according to the method mentioned. First BMC 2021XX, where XX is your roll number. So that whole thing is your roll number, followed by a hyphen, your full name. I mean, if it is with initials, first name, last name, whatever convention you are following, followed then by hyphen, and then CM1 P1 for problem set 1, and then it will be P2 for the next one. Yeah. Now, I hope you are able to hear me. Okay.
Yes.
Great. In the meantime, in case I forget to record our lecture, please remind me so that it is available to you, at least if I am able to do that. I am recording this time. Now, we have 48 participants. Yeah, so the TAs Shubhendu and Vishnu Kadiri are also with us. For this meeting, we will continue to have the waiting room and admission from there. So please, I have made you co-hosts. You can admit others. One more thing, in submitting through Moodle, you need to press the submit button. Without that, your answer sheet will only be a draft and will not actually be submitted. So this was a problem faced by a few of you. Please ensure that you submit and submit on time before the deadline. We will not consider late submissions. Yeah. Now, any questions at this stage? Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I was glad to receive your answer sheets. I will discuss them as well. But perhaps I will first begin with a question that was asked towards the end of last lecture. This was posed, I forget by whom, was it about non-uniform circular motion. And I think it was Gautam Vishwanathan, am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so you asked, let me recall. So we will have a particle moving on a circle, and we did discuss the case of uniform circular motion. Now we want to briefly talk about non-uniform circular motion. Now in this case, we can still talk about a radius vector or position vector of the particle, and that is given by r equal to L, if L is the radius of the circle, L times cosine omega t, comma sine omega t. So I'm using a common notation to separate the x and y components. We could use x hat and y hat. We'll get used to both conventions. Now, this is, of course, the position vector. It is radially outwards. From this, we can compute the velocity vector, and that is given by L omega. I must just differentiate this. L omega times minus sine omega t, comma, cosine omega t. Yeah, this is if omega is a constant. But now let us suppose it is non-uniform. So let us suppose it is non-uniform circular motion. And in that case, omega is not a constant. Omega is not a constant. Yeah. So far, we have assumed omega is a constant, but since it is not, we need to differentiate omega as well. The question posed was concerning whether the velocity and acceleration are orthogonal or not in this case. And let us address that question simply by proceeding to calculate velocity and then acceleration. So I need to add to this velocity one more term. And you will help me do this. The L is simply a constant factor that remains there. But in addition, when I differentiate omega t, I have two terms. I have the differential of t, which is give me the coefficient omega, but then you have also the omega dot term, omega dot times t. So let me write that omega dot times t times minus sine omega t, comma, cosine omega t. Yeah. Basically, I'm using the chain rule of differentiation. When I differentiate omega t, there are two terms. One is simply omega, the other is omega dot times t. Is this okay for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So now the velocity can be written. I will combine the terms and write the velocity as L times omega plus t omega dot as a constant coefficient times this vector, which has components minus sine omega t, comma, cosine omega t. Yeah. So this is my velocity vector for non-uniform circular motion. Any question about how I obtained this?
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, the argument of cos and sine in R should also change, right? It should be in the form of an integral.
Wait a minute. So first thing, I would like to know your name.
Avinash Rathore.
Okay, very good. And here we are computing the time derivative of the position vector. So this is differentiation as opposed to integration. Now, okay, let me go through this a bit more slowly. I have the, okay, so I was a little bit puzzled when you said integral. Could you please clarify?
I said, I meant that the definition of R here should be also different, not definition exactly, but the term for it.
Okay, okay. You are saying this formula for R that I have written is itself to be checked. Okay, well, okay, let us see what the physics of the situation is. It's a particle that moving on a circle of fixed radius L. Now, a point on a circle can always be parameterized by x and y coordinates given by L cos theta and L sin theta, where theta is the angle subtended by the instantaneous location of the particle with respect to the horizontal axis. All right. So in that respect, this formula for R is completely general. The non-uniformity of the motion is encoded in theta being written as omega t, where omega itself is time dependent. You could simply say it is theta of t. Okay, that's also fine. You don't need to use the symbol omega at all. Yeah, the reason we have used it is to reduce to the case of uniform circular motion in a simple way by assuming that omega is a constant. Does this clarify your point, Avinash?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So, and now when we differentiate this formula with respect to time, we use the chain rule and obtain two terms. So is Avinash Rathore okay with this calculation, having assumed this formula for R?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. Okay, as I said, you could write this coefficient and multiply it by x hat. This is the coefficient of x hat and this is the coefficient of y hat. Now I ask the question, is V perpendicular to R? What is the answer to that question?
Yes, sir.
That is true, because if you compute the dot product V dot R, it is indeed 0. The coefficient doesn't really matter. It's really the dot product of these two vectors that matters. And a minus sign times cosine plus cosine times sine. Minus sign times cosine plus cosine times sine. That is 0. And therefore, we conclude that V is tangent to the circle, as it had to be. After all, the particle is confined to a circle, and therefore an infinitesimal displacement of the particle must be tangential, or we also call that azimuthal. Okay. Okay. So much for the velocity. You could, of course, ask what is the speed, and that is a simple calculation, which is to compute V dot V and take its square root. I will leave you to do that. By the way, just as a matter of terminology, I perhaps I confused you a little bit last time. Omega is called the angular speed, and occasionally also called angular frequency. All right. But the better term is angular speed. I sometimes lapse into angular frequency, and perhaps that was a bit unintentional, though it is also used. So Shakti Chauhan has raised his hand. Please ask your question.
Sir, to talk about the velocity vector, it is appropriate only when we are talking about infinitesimal displacement. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
You are absolutely right. Velocity has to do with the rate of infinitesimal displacements. Yes, finite displacements are not concerned with velocity. Yeah, that's true. Okay, now proceeding. So I will not write the formula for speed. I encourage you to do that. Of course, this should reduce to what we are familiar with. If omega dot is 0, that would be the case of uniform circular motion. Then you see that the magnitude of V is simply L times the magnitude of omega, because this second term would be absent, and the vector in parentheses is a unit vector, because sine squared plus cosine squared is 1, and therefore the magnitude of speed would be L omega. But if it is non-uniform, you will have a correction term. Any questions so far?
Sir, I had a question related to what Avinash asked, like a continuation of it. When angular speed is time dependent itself,
Yes.
the angle theta t is integration of omega dt from 0 to t, right?
That is true. Yes, yes. The total angle, total angle is the integral of the, yes, that's right. Yeah.
So R will become L cos theta comma sine theta, right? That's the general thing.
Yeah.
Instead of omega t, that it should be theta t, right? We are just writing omega t for uniform circular motion.
Yes.
So when we differentiate cos theta sine theta,
yes,
then by chain rule we only get differentiation of theta, which is omega itself, right? So we don't get the omega dot term.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is what my question.
Okay, see, I am simply defining theta of t as omega of t times t. Okay, this is you may not like this, and I am happy with that feeling of yours. You could simply call it theta of t. Just for convenience, to reduce to the uniform case in a simple way, I am writing theta as omega of t times t. Okay, I see what you're saying. You don't like my notation. Okay. Okay. Your point is well taken. Your point is well taken. My convention is not the most desirable. Okay. Is that your problem?
No, sir. Sir, like not the convection itself, but like more like if we write it like as the integral theta as the integral omega dt, then we don't get a term in the differentiation, like in the velocity part when we differentiate position, we don't get a term. That's why that's like my question. Like that should not be dependent on your notation, right?
Okay. Yeah. See, okay, I'm I'm a little confused as to what you're asking, but perhaps I should take a step back and
Sir, I think he means that if you have like omega t times t, when you differentiate that part, right?
Yes,
You get
yes.
like sum, right? Which is just omega and omega dot t. But if you just have theta, you just get theta dot times that vector. You don't have to bother about that extra term.
You are right. Yeah.
I think that's what he means, right?
Okay,
So
perhaps that is what he's referring to. And let me take your cue. Let me redo from start. Yeah. Let me start maybe perhaps with a notation that is better. And let me start with the notation R is equal to L times cosine theta of t, comma sine theta of t. All right. Now we will define the angular speed as omega of t equal to theta dot of t. Maybe if you want to put some magnitude, that is also okay. I think I shall admit that my notation was not good. This is a better notation. Let us start from the beginning. This is the position vector of the particle on the circle. And to draw a picture, this is theta of t. And it changes with time in a manner where theta dot is not a constant. All right. Is that acceptable to Siddhant Shah?
Yes, sir. I also sent I wrote what I was trying to say down and I sent a screenshot on the chat itself. So maybe that might help.
Okay. Well, I have not yet seen your screenshot. So yeah, I think I will have to open the chat box and see.
So it's basically what you've written at this point. Yeah.
Okay. So then we are on the same page. Okay. Fine. So let us proceed from here. So now the velocity is given by, okay, I did see your screenshot. See, the omega I had defined was badly defined. I take it back. It was an unfortunate attempt to shoehorn uniform circular motion into non-uniform circular motion. That was not a good idea. Therefore, I am starting afresh. So now we compute the velocity, and that is given by L times theta dot times minus sine theta of t, comma cosine theta of t. Please tell me if you are in agreement with this formula.
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. And now we raise again the physical question, is V perpendicular to R? And the answer is indeed yes, because this vector is perpendicular to that vector. Cosine times minus sine plus sine times cosine is 0. Indeed, it is true, V dot R is 0. So V is tangential. Okay, now we proceed to the next physical quantity, namely acceleration. And that is given by V dot. Okay, so let us compute that. We are going to get two types of terms, those coming from the differentiation of theta dot and those coming from the differentiation of the vector components themselves. So let us do precisely that. I'll do it in two steps. I'll first differentiate the coefficient, so L theta double dot, and then the vector remains the same, minus sine theta comma cosine theta. That's the first term. I'm using the product rule of differentiation component wise, plus L times theta dot squared times minus cos theta, comma, sine theta. Okay, so I've jumped one step perhaps. So I'd like to take a moment for you to absorb this. When I differentiate the quantity in parentheses, in both cases, I will get theta dot terms, which will come out and make it theta dot squared. And the minus sign when differentiated becomes minus cosine, and the cosine when differentiated becomes sine.
Minus.
Thank you very much. Yes, I was wrong. Okay, so now we notice something very interesting, that the acceleration has two different components. So let us recognize these. The first one, minus sine theta cosine theta, is in what direction? See, the coefficient doesn't
Sir,
matter.
of velocity.
Yeah, it's in the same direction as velocity. I mean, just comparing the previous line. So this is proportional to v. So the first term in acceleration, does it point radial or tangential?
It's tangential.
Very good, just like v. So this is tangential. Okay, in addition to that, we have one more term, which is minus L theta dot squared times cos theta sine theta. Okay, I've just removed the minus sign. Now this cosine theta sine theta is in which direction?
Radial.
Radial, because that was basically the radius vector, right? If I go back to, oh, I had it here. The radius vector is written here. So this is proportional to r. So we come to the conclusion that A has both tangential and radial components. And therefore, V dotted with A is not equal to 0. Yeah. So A is not purely radial for non-uniform motion. And we have demonstrated that. The amount by which it fails to be radial is this theta double dot term. That's what's sort of angular acceleration. Yeah, we can give this a name. Angular acceleration is causing this acceleration to have a tangential component. Whereas the other term in the acceleration, what was the name we gave to it?
The centripetal.
Very good, centripetal. So in other words, we have what we will sort of temporarily call the tangential angular acceleration as well as the centripetal acceleration. And these two point tangential and radially inward. It's radially inward because there's a minus sign here. All right. So is this satisfactory?
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot.
Okay, that was Gautam's. Okay, in answer to Gautam. Yeah. To be honest, I intended to make this a homework problem, and you have spoiled my game. Okay. Okay. So now let us go back to or proceed to a new topic. Actually, it carries on from here. I would like to discuss polar coordinates, which this problem has emphasized as being important. So I'd like to set up the concept of polar coordinates on the plane with a little bit of care. All right, I'm sure you have seen this before. I mean, we have implicitly been using it all this while, but let's make it a bit more formal and go a step further. Any questions so far? Okay, so we are going to discuss plane polar coordinates. Now, why do you do this? Well, for many problems in physics and also mathematics and engineering and elsewhere, especially those problems where there is rotational symmetry around a central object. Yeah, Now, this central object could be the sun in planetary dynamics. It could be the nucleus in atomic physics. Yeah, it could be somebody standing in the middle and tugging at a string that is being rotated. Yeah. So in all these problems and many more, there is some kind of central object that is either very massive or having a large charge. Yeah. And around that, other things may move, and you may have some sort of rotational symmetry. In such problems, polar coordinates are found to be much more convenient than Cartesian coordinates. All right. I mean, we are going to see this again and again, but this is just the first step. So, so for simplicity, we will consider polar coordinates on the plane, okay, as opposed to 3 dimensions. We will then proceed to 3 dimensions. So let us consider the plane with an origin chosen. And suppose we are given an origin, which we call O, and we pick horizontal and vertical directions, call them X and Y axes. Yeah, so this is X and Y. Yeah. Now, given a point P with Cartesian coordinates X and Y, yeah, we are going to set up polar coordinates in the following manner. The distance from the origin will be called the radial coordinate. So R is the distance of P from the origin. And theta will be defined as the angle that the radius vector R, so the radius vector R is simply xx hat plus yy hat, right? That radius vector R subtends an angle theta counterclockwise with the horizontal axis. So R and theta shall be our polar coordinates. Theta shall be measured in radians so that points on the y-axis have theta equal to what? Please tell me.
Pi by 2.
That's one possibility indeed. Would you
Or
like
minus pi by 2.
Or minus pi by 2. Yeah. Now we have to pick some fundamental domain for theta. It is clear that theta equal to 0 and theta equal to 2 pi are one and the same. Both refer to the positive x-axis. So we could choose theta running from 0 to 2 pi. Another option is to take theta running from minus pi to pi. Yeah. So the choice is ours. And we will keep switching among these. All right. Any question about that? Okay. And we do follow the convention of measuring theta counterclockwise. If you change that, things change. One just needs to be aware of that. Now, from elementary trigonometry, we see that the cosine of theta is given by x by r. Yeah, cosine theta is x by r. And so this height is y, this is x. By the way, in a fancy terminology, what is x called and what is y called? There is some fancy name for these two.
Abscissa and ordinate.
Yeah, okay, very good. So x is called the abscissa. And y is called the ordinate. So sometimes we use that terminology. Okay. So then tangent of theta is given by y upon x, again, by looking at this right angle triangle. As I said, the radial coordinate is the distance from the origin to the position P, and that is given by the square root of x squared plus y squared. And taking the inverse tangent of this formula, you will find that theta is arc tangent y upon x, or equivalently arc cosine of x upon r. We could, of course, invert these relations and go back to the familiar formulae, x equal to r cosine theta and y equal to r sine theta. So this is our setup of plane polar coordinates. Now let us understand a few geometric features of this coordinate system. First, a question. The origin, what is theta at the origin?
It's not defined.
Correct. What is r at the origin?
R is 0.
R is 0 indeed, but theta unfortunately is not defined at the origin. Or some people will say theta can take any value, 0 to 2 pi, all of them refer to the same point. Yeah. So we say that this coordinate system is singular. So the coordinate system, namely the polar coordinate system, theta r coordinate system, is singular or breaks down at the origin. Okay. In other words, there is not a one-to-one correspondence between xy and r theta at the origin. All values of theta correspond to the origin, whereas only x equal to 0, y equal to 0 correspond to the origin. So there is no one-to-one correspondence between xy and r theta at the origin. Okay, so this is a feature, a somewhat unpleasant feature of polar coordinates. We have to live with it. We will work around it. It's not as bad as it looks. Okay. Now for additional geometric features, let us first go back to our Cartesian coordinate system and ask what the coordinate lines look like. Yeah, by that I mean, what are the constant x and constant y curves? If I put x equal to constant, what kind of curve do I get?
So x is like xy may, you will get a straight line.
Yes, straight line in which direction?
X
Yeah,
constant
y
will be
axis.
parallel to y axis.
Correct. So the constant x curves are straight lines parallel to the y axis. Similarly, the constant y curves, that means constant height, are straight lines parallel to the x axis. Okay. So this is a nice feature of Cartesian coordinates. That is, the coordinate curves, or more precisely, the level curves of the coordinate functions. Let me use that terminology. The level curves of coordinate functions x and y are straight lines. Okay. Level curve means the set of points on which that function is a constant. They are straight lines. They are orthogonal to each other. This family of vertical straight lines is orthogonal to the family of horizontal straight lines. All right. Any question about this terminology? Okay. Now, by contrast, let us proceed to polar coordinates. What are the constant theta curves?
Straight lines
Straight lines of what sort?
Passing through
passing
origin.
through origin.
Okay. Do they really pass through the
So
origin?
would they be called straight lines or straight rays?
Ah, that's a better term. Yeah, they are rays. They are rays. Because, well, at the origin, we have not really defined theta. You want to extend it to that point, it's okay. But you can't go reverse through the origin, because then theta will go from some 24 degrees to pi plus 24 degrees. So yes, we will now agree that the constant theta curves are rays emanating radially outward from the origin. Yeah, so I can draw a picture. Here is my coordinate system. This is the ray with theta equal to pi upon 4, and then you got this ray with pi upon 2, and this is the ray with theta equal to 0, and so on. Yeah. So these are rays emanating from the origin. The origin is really not part of this coordinate system, strictly speaking. On the other hand, the constant r curves, the level curves of r, the r function, because r is equal to x squared plus y squared square root thereof, are actually concentric circles centered at the origin. Okay, so we've got these concentric circles. The origin itself is one of those circles of 0 radius, but then you got these concentric circles. Notice that this family of concentric circles is everywhere orthogonal to that family of radially outward lines. Okay. So these family of curves are perpendicular to each other, just like x curves and y curves were orthogonal to each other. So that feature is maintained. However, the constant R curves are not straight lines, they are circles. For this reason, polar coordinates are called curvilinear coordinates. So this is a name given to such coordinate systems. Yeah, they are called curvilinear coordinates. Okay, so that is just some terminology and a few geometric features. Now, to study vectors in this system, we need a basis for vectors, and a basis of unit vectors is particularly useful. And we are going to introduce a pair of unit vectors called r hat and theta hat. Let us see how this goes. Now recall that at a point x comma y in the plane, we had the concept of x hat and y hat. Unit vectors pointing in the direction of increasing x and increasing y, holding the other one fixed. Okay, so let us recall that at any point x comma y, we had this concept of x hat and y hat. Of course, originally they were only along the two axes, we had these unit vectors, but I will extend that concept to any point also. Simply parallel transport them there. Now, you can do that at any point. They point in the same way, they just translated out a bit. Okay. So x hat is the unit vector in the direction of increasing x holding y fixed. Now, similarly, we will define the unit vectors r hat and theta hat at any point r comma theta. So I take a point r comma theta, and I'm going to define theta hat and r hat. We will define the r hat points radially outwards. It's in the direction of increasing r, so the points radially outwards. And that is what this figure shows you. R hat points radially outwards at this point. And theta hat will point counterclockwise tangentially to the circle of radius r, because that is where theta increases holding r fixed. So this one is called theta hat. This is r hat and theta hat. They are orthogonal. We will write them. We will write their components in Cartesian coordinates and check that they're orthogonal. But I hope you can see that from the picture and from what we said earlier, that the level curves of r and those of theta are everywhere orthogonal to each other. Okay, so now our next job is that we have two bases. You have the x hat y hat basis and the r hat theta hat basis. And therefore, you can expand any vector in terms of basis vectors. In particular, I should be able to expand the r hat vector itself in the x hat y hat basis, and the theta hat vector in the x hat y hat basis. So this will be a useful formula. Let us see. I want to write r hat as a linear combination of x hat and y hat. So I just need to find its components. From the figure, you will notice that the x component of the r hat vector is given by cosine theta. Okay, this length. The length of the vector is 1, so it's simply cosine theta. And similarly, the vertical component is given by sine theta. Okay. Now, the words r hat is cosine theta x hat plus sine theta y hat. And we can also write this as x upon r x hat plus y upon r y hat, okay, because that was the definition of x and y in terms of r and theta. Similarly, we can write theta hat. Now, theta hat is one step further. Theta hat points towards the northeast in my picture. Sorry, northwest. Yeah. And therefore, its vertical component, and using the fact that this angle is the same as that angle, its vertical component The y component is the cosine of the angle theta, whereas its horizontal component is actually negative. I mean, for this setup. So it is minus sine theta. It's this distance. It should be minus sine theta. Okay, so here we are. We have written formulae for r hat and theta hat. So take a moment to absorb this.
So I had one question. It's related to the previous discussion. Okay, so over there you said that just because of one single point, like the origin, that polar coordinate system breaks down or something. I think you used that term.
Yes,
But
yes.
I was thinking why. I mean, this definitely limits our action. So why don't we just define something? I mean, it sounds vague, but isn't it possible? Like I would say like theta equal to 0. Maybe that's not possible or because of some condition. But
Correct. What is the condition that creates problems? See, we want these coordinate functions which we define, namely r and theta, to at least be continuous functions of x and y. Now you can, like you said, simply define at the origin theta equal to 0, or somebody else may prefer theta equal to 23 and so on. Yeah, but the sad part is that if you approach the origin in different ways, yeah, this way, that way, yeah. In fact, suppose we approach it along a radial direction. Yeah, theta would be a constant, right? Here theta is something like 80 degrees or so, 80 degrees, 80 degrees, 80 degrees, 80 degrees, and suddenly you're defining it to be 0 degrees. Yeah, that causes me some indigestion. So you say, okay, I should define as. Is that understood?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So unfortunately, there is no way to really extend the r theta coordinate system to the origin in a manner that there is a one-to-one correspondence between the two systems, to the pairs, two pairs. Yeah. Okay. Good. But that's a good question. Sorry.
What exactly is meant by a coordinate function? I mean, I kind of get what it is, but how do we?
Yeah.
Why is it called a function?
Yeah. Yeah. See, x and I will often define things through examples, or rather motivate through examples before giving some sort of formal definition. And like it or not, this is the way science works. I don't exclude mathematics. Most things are defined or discovered through examples, and then definitions are invented. Now, x and y are called coordinate functions. What is a function? A function is a gadget that assigns a real number to a point. So now we are considering functions on the plane. So we take a point on the plane. Any gadget that assigns a real number to that point is called a function. Now you may want functions that are continuous or smooth and so on. That's a different matter. Now, x itself is a function. It is a rather simple function. It assigns to this point the abscissa of that point. End of story. Y is another function. It assigns to this point the ordinate of that point. They are called coordinate functions because x and y are our coordinates. That is the reason for the name. They are somewhat special functions. They are somewhat simple functions. I should not say special. They are very special. They are very simple. But does that answer your question?
Sort of, but what do we mean by abscissa if we're if this is a function which assigns the abscissa, how do we find the abscissa before? And it's feeling sort of circular to me.
No. I am only giving the definition of the name coordinate function. X and y have already been defined. Yeah, x is the horizontal distance. X is the horizontal component, and y is the vertical component. Those have already been defined. Yeah. So no, I'm sorry if I confuse the logic. I am only justifying the name coordinate function. X squared plus y squared is also a function, but I don't call it a coordinate function. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I get it better now, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. The square root of x squared plus y squared is also a coordinate function in polar coordinates. it is better known as R. Yeah. So depending on your coordinate functions, depending on your coordinate system, the coordinate functions differ. In polar coordinates, the coordinate functions are R and theta.
So, sir, can we say that the coordinate functions are projections?
No, I don't know whether I want to see. In order to define X and Y, you may have to do some projection and so on. Agreed.
Okay.
But I would not like to say that the coordinate functions are projections. Yeah. And this was Sankalp Sundar asking, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't quite like to call them projections. Yeah. I mean, R is not really the projection of something. Yeah. I mean, you may be able to make sense of that, but yeah, I don't feel that that is a very helpful point of view.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Any other question so far?
Sir, I have a question about like the orthogonality of the level curves. So for this particular example, we see it happening, but in general, if you were to define a coordinate system, let's say that maps x comma y to f of xy and g of xy, right? Would it be orthogonal if it was like some sort of isomorphism of the plane?
Yeah.
Or under what conditions, perhaps?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's not always the case. You can make changes of coordinates where the new coordinate curves are not orthogonal. Yeah. So there are. So one needs to impose additional conditions. Now, I mean, okay, this is something that one studies in Riemannian geometry. Yeah, so your question is well taken. It is not guaranteed. You need to impose some conditions, only then it happens. So yeah, so we will discuss that. I mean, it's not completely relevant to what we're talking about here, so I don't want to devote time to that now. But yeah, one needs to think under what circumstances this is the case. What kind of changes of coordinates in a sense are orthogonal. Okay, so yeah, if we have a chance, I will explain that through some examples, or I'll do that sometime. Okay, any other question? All right, so now that we have got our r hat and theta hat, we shall check, as we asserted, that they are actually orthogonal, and not only that, unit norm. I mean, it's sort of true by construction and from the figure, but there is no harm in checking. In order to do that, we simply have to compute r dot theta, r hat dot theta hat, dot product of these two, and you will notice that the first term is going to give you minus sine times cosine. X dot x gives you 1, and then you will get sine times cosine. Y dot y gives you 1. Yeah. So r hat dot theta hat is equal to the cross terms give you 0, because x hat dot y hat is 0 and x hat dot y hat is again 0. They don't contribute, and therefore r hat dot theta hat is equal to minus cs plus sc, which is 0, where c and s stand for sine and cosine, cosine and sine. Okay, so they are indeed orthogonal, and they're also of unit norm, which is again easily checked. R hat dot r hat is going to be given by cosine squared x dot x plus sine squared y hat dot y hat, and the cross terms again are 0. So this gives you what is going on? It gives you cos squared plus sine squared, which is equal to 1. So indeed, r hat is a unit vector, and the same is true about theta hat. All right. Okay, and I will leave as a little exercise to you to express in the opposite direction x hat and y hat as linear combinations of r hat and theta hat. Important feature that I want to point out, that while x hat and y hat point in the same directions everywhere. They're sort of parallel to each other everywhere. That is not the case with r hat and theta hat. So at this point, r hat points radially outwards, and whereas at this point also it points radially outwards, but that radial outward and this radial outward are not parallel to each other. So we will say that r hat and theta hat, the directions of r hat and theta hat change with location. So this is generally the case with curvilinear coordinates, and we will have to deal with that. And we are going to do precisely that now. So let us now talk a bit more about physical quantities that we can work with. In particular, we want to model the position and the velocity and the acceleration of a particle using polar coordinates. Now, as before, the position vector can be expressed in polar coordinates. Recall that r is equal to x hat plus y hat. Yeah? If the particle is at the point x comma y. Now this, when we write it in polar coordinates, x is r cos theta and y is r sin theta. And recall that cos theta x hat plus sin theta y hat was actually r hat. That was what r hat was from this formula, cos theta x hat plus sin theta y hat. Yeah. And therefore, we notice that the radius vector or position vector is equal to r hat. Okay, very simple. Makes sense after all. Position vector points radially outward. It has a length given by r. So we should have expected this formula. The position vector itself doesn't have any azimuthal component. No tangential component. All right. Now, suppose the particle is actually moving, so that boldface r is a function of time given by the distance from the origin, which is itself a function of time, times r hat of t. So let me draw a picture. The particle is moving like this. Okay. So at this stage, at this time, the r hat points this way. At this time, r hat points that way. So r hat itself is a function of time along the trajectory. R hat is a function of time along the trajectory. Is that understood? Now we come to our task of computing the velocity. So I emphasize once again, as the particle moves along a trajectory, the radial coordinate r can change, the distance from origin can change, but so can the unit vector r hat itself. Thus, its velocity is given by a sum of two terms. So v by definition is simply time derivative of boldface r, but that's also given. So now differentiating this expression, we will get two terms by the product rule. R dot times r hat plus r times dr hat dt. Yeah, so sometimes we write this as r dot times r hat plus r hat dot. We are building multi-story buildings here. Okay, now the first term is what we might naively guess as the radial velocity. Yeah. But the other term is also present, and it comes from a change in direction of the basis vector r hat, as I have just emphasized. So it's important to keep both. And now we come to the important problem of finding out what r hat dot is, this weird object. And to compute that, we're going to go back to Cartesian coordinates, where we know that x hat and y hat don't change with time. Yeah, and do the computation there. So let us take a moment to find the rates of change of the basis unit vectors r hat and theta hat okay, along a trajectory. Now, being unit vectors, their change can come only from a change in their direction. Okay, I mean, this is just a simple observation. Now let us compute what r hat dot is. Okay, we start from the definition. R hat is cos theta x hat plus sine theta y hat. Okay, that was the definition. Computing the time derivative dr hat dt, we get two terms. Derivative of cosine gives you minus sine times theta dot x hat plus cosine theta theta dot y hat. Now, lo and behold, we notice that if we take theta hat dot common outside, yeah, it multiplies the combination minus sine theta x hat plus cos theta y hat. Now that was precisely what our theta hat vector is, minus sine theta x hat plus cos theta y hat. Okay, so we come to the remarkable conclusion that r hat dot is equal to theta dot theta hat. So I would first like to check whether you are okay with this calculation before perhaps understanding it geometrically. How we went about this little calculation. Any question about it? Okay. So let us just interpret this. What we are saying is that the change in the unit vector r hat is always in the azimuthal direction, theta hat direction. Yeah, that's what we have discovered here. It is always in the azimuthal direction. Yeah. In other words, neither the magnitude nor the direction of r hat changes in the radial direction. I mean, the magnitude of r hat cannot change because it's a unit vector. But even the direction of r hat can only change in the theta hat direction. Yeah, so I encourage you to try to understand this through a figure. I don't want to do it all for you, but let me just get things started. Suppose we have particle here. It moves somewhere else. Yeah, suppose it moves somewhere else, a little bit here. Now this was our r hat, and it moves a little bit, not a whole lot. Yeah, so let's suppose it's nearby. Now this was the original radial vector, radius vector. This is the new one. I want to compare the two. So I will compare the two by sort of moving this one there parallelly. Yeah, so I'll have two of these vectors nearby, and the difference of the 2 points in this direction. And the picture sort of conveys to you is that that change is always perpendicular to r hat itself. Because if the change had any component in the direction of r hat, then the length of r hat would change with time, and that's not allowed. Yeah, because it's a unit vector. Yeah, so it is not surprising that r hat d by dt is proportional to theta hat. So I hope I have justified that.
Sir, could you explain it once again, the geometric interpretation?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, let us go back to this picture. The particle was originally here and had a radius vector r or position vector r at time t. It makes a small displacement to a new location with position vector r of t plus delta t. Okay, and at that point, the position vector, at that point, the r hat vector points radially outwards. Here also it pointed radially outwards. Now let us recall what is r hat dot. Yeah, it is r hat of t plus delta t minus r hat of t upon delta t in the limit where delta t goes to 0. That is the difference quotient. Therefore, I must take the new vector r hat of t plus delta t subtract from it the original vector, and that is that subtraction procedure that I am doing in this separate figure. I draw both of them with a common origin by moving it over. The difference is given by this little vector, as you have observed in your problem set one, first problem. Now we make the further observation that this little vector, at least from the figure, is not in the same direction, has no component in the same direction as r hat, for the simple reason that r hat maintains its length. It is a unit vector, it maintains its length, so its change must be orthogonal to it. This goes back to our general discussion in the last lecture, that if there is a vector whose rate of change is orthogonal to itself, then that vector must simply rotate. Yeah, I mean, okay, that was a further discussion, but at least here, if the change has no component along r hat, then the length of r hat at least will not change. Yeah, that is what we need over here. Does that clarify the geometric picture to you?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, was that
Excuse me, sir?
Neelam who
Yes,
asked?
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, yes. All right, somebody else had a question?
Excuse me, sir. Sir, you have written that the 2 times r hat. You have written that for the of the RT vector and the RT plus delta vector, both the times you have written the r cap vectors. So
okay, I should
the
write
direction
I should correct myself. The r hat itself depends on where you are. So this is r hat at time t, and this is r hat at t plus delta t. Is that what you were pointing out?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I was pointing that out.
Okay, thank you. Yes, you are absolutely right. The vector r hat changes with location, so it is important to tell at what time we are evaluating it.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir,
Okay, Shakti
here-
Chauhan. Yes.
This triangle is a right angle triangle. So how can hypotenuse length be equal to the base length? The magnitude of like r hat and r hat t plus delta t.
Okay. See, this is indeed an isosceles triangle. But okay. No. See, this is a okay. This is the business of infinitesimals. This is the business of infinitesimals. We are supposed to keep only quantities to linear order. There is a definite sense in which this is a right angle, this is a right angle, and that is a right angle. You don't like it, but it is still true to linear order. The angle delta theta. How can this magic happen? All I am saying is that approximately all these three are right angles. In fact, if you compute this angle, and you are quite right, it is not 90 degrees, it is slightly less than 90 degrees, but I claim that the departure of this angle from 90 degrees is second order in smallness in this angle. And if we work to first order in smallness in that angle, we will not detect such discrepancies. This is the business of working with infinitesimals to a given order. Does that at least indicate how this magic can happen?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. We will encounter such arguments later also. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, now one more little thing. See, I mean, physics is also about interpreting formulae and understanding them. So here we have argued that d by dt of r hat is in the theta hat direction, but the coefficient also requires some discussion. The coefficient is theta dot. Let's at least understand the sign of that. Right? Let us just make a little attempt. In this picture, we notice that theta has increased. Right? It started at maybe 20 degrees and gone to 30 degrees or maybe 40 degrees. Right? So theta has increased. So theta dot would be positive, and therefore this coefficient would be positive. So r hat dot we have calculated is theta dot theta hat. All I am saying is the sign being positive is understandable because in the example we considered, theta has increased, theta dot is positive, and therefore r hat dot should point in the theta hat direction as opposed to the minus theta hat direction. And indeed, that is what the figure is saying. It points counterclockwise as opposed to this way. Yeah. So we can at least understand both the sign and the direction. Okay. Okay, now we can play a similar game and compute for ourselves what theta hat dot is. So I will leave this as a little exercise for you. It is done in exactly the same way. We start with the definition of theta hat, namely minus sine theta x hat plus cosine theta y hat. Yeah, just recall that at a point here, theta had pointed that way. It had two components, and this was the angle theta. Yeah. So the horizontal component was negative sine theta, vertical component was cosine theta. Then we compute d theta hat dt, and again you have two terms, minus sine theta theta dot x hat minus sine theta theta dot y hat. And then we observe that cos theta sine theta is simply r hat, and therefore theta hat dot is equal to minus theta dot r hat. So we have derived two very nice formulae, extremely compact and nice formula for the rate of change of the unit vector in the theta direction. Any question about these two calculations? I will let you draw a figure and sort of interpret this formula, just like we did for the r hat dot formula. As a matter of terminology, r hat points radially and theta hat, the direction of theta hat is defined as the azimuthal direction. So that is the definition of azimuthal direction. It is the direction theta hat. So Shakti Chauhan has raised his hand. Please tell me.
Sir, r hat dot represents the rate of change of direction. So what does this theta hat dot represents in that sense?
Yeah. So theta hat is also a vector. It's a unit vector. Let us recall what it is. Let me go back to this figure of the trajectory. Particle was here. At that point, you have an r hat vector and a theta hat vector. Okay. Now particle moves to some new location. At that new location, at a subsequent instant of time, you're going to have a new r hat vector which points radially outward and a new azimuthal unit vector theta hat of t plus delta t. Now, what is theta hat dot? Well, it is the difference between these two vectors over a very short interval of time divided by that time. So it is simply asking, how does the unit vector in the azimuthal direction change along the trajectory? It is the rate of change of unit vector in azimuthal direction along trajectory. Okay, that is what it is. So, I mean, the trajectory need not be a circle. There is no such requirement. I mean, the trajectory could be altogether different. The trajectory could be downwards or something. Yeah. And then you would have a theta hat this way. And then after some time, the theta hat would be pointing, well, here the theta hat would point upwards. Okay, maybe it's worth drawing another picture. Suppose this is our coordinate system. The coordinate axis, the particle goes simply vertically downwards. Here, theta hat pointed that way. r hat pointed this way. At this point, r hat points this way and theta hat points this way. This is at t, this is at t plus delta t. Okay. You notice here that theta has decreased because the particle has come towards the x-axis. So theta dot is actually negative. Theta dot is negative, so minus theta dot will be positive. And therefore, we have according to the formula, theta hat dot points in the r hat direction, positive r hat direction. Okay. So let us draw a figure and see if that makes sense. I start with this vector. I end with this vector. Yeah. This is my theta hat at time t. This is my theta hat at t plus delta t. I'm simply copying these two vectors down here. And therefore, theta hat at t plus delta t minus theta hat of t is going to point this way. Did I do something wrong? Okay, let me not try to fix my figure. I leave it as a little exercise to you to interpret this formula through a little figure. I've indicated how you go about it. I am I am challenging myself. Oh, I'm sorry. Theta of t plus delta t minus theta of t. So it points this way. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm subtracting this vector and I'm adding this vector. So it must point towards that. And indeed, that is the radially outward direction. Sorry, I went through this a bit quickly and I also made a slight mistake in the calculation. I mean, the explanation. But I believe I have tried to convey to you why theta hat dot points in the r hat direction, and also it points in the positive r hat direction if theta dot is negative, that is the particle is going downwards. Shakti, I think you're the one who asked, is this of any help?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. Any other question right now? Okay. All right, let me go to the next stage. Now we're just going to put things together. Putting these two calculations together, we get the decomposition of the velocity of the particle in polar coordinates, right? So recall the velocity of particle was defined as boldface r dot. So that was d by dt of r hat. And that gave you two terms, r dot r hat plus r hat dot. So r dot r hat we simply copy down, and we have just discovered that r hat dot is given by theta dot theta hat. And therefore we have discovered a formula for the velocity of a particle in polar coordinate basis. There are two terms, and we will interpret the two terms, or at least give them names. We will say that the r hat component is, which is given by r dot, is called the radial velocity of the particle. Okay, that is the radial component of the velocity, the particle, while the theta hat component, that is v dot theta hat, that is given by r theta dot. For uniform circular motion, r theta dot was simply r omega. And this is the angular or azimuthal component of velocity. Okay. So the velocity has both radial and azimuthal components in general. If it is circular motion, which of these components vanishes?
The radial one.
The radial one vanishes indeed. So for circular motion at constant radius L, r dot is simply 0, and therefore v is given only by L theta dot theta hat. And it is purely azimuthal or purely tangential. And the speed of the particle is then given by the magnitude of this coefficient, which is L times the magnitude of theta dot. Yeah, so that is the linear speed of the particle. And the angular speed is given by V upon L, which is simply theta dot in magnitude. Okay, so this is our formula for the velocity of a particle in plane polar coordinates. This is to be contrasted with the much simpler formula V equal to x dot x hat plus y dot y hat, which we write down in one without much thought in Cartesian coordinates. We have derived the analog of this formula in plane polar coordinates. Okay, so that's all we've done. We've generalized this formula to plane polar coordinates and discovered a few nice things along the way. Any question about this? Okay. I only have, okay, I'm already out of time. So I think I should stop. The last thing that I wanted to do was to go one step further and compute the acceleration in polar coordinates. And that should be straightforward. I will do that next time, I guess, because I'm out of time now. But in the meantime, please let me know if you have any questions about what we have discussed. Or urgent questions about the homework. Okay, good. So then we will continue next week on Tuesday, 11:50 a.m. and we shall meet again then. Okay. I have a question from Apratim Ghosh. Could you upload this file on your website? Aha, you are asking me to upload this where I have marked up the notes. Okay. Well, what I have been doing by and large is to incorporate what I have written in by hand over here in the notes. Okay? I mean, not everything, but by and large, the important things. I hope that will serve the purpose. I mean, yeah, so going forward, I will try to do that. Whatever additional remarks I have made here, I will put over there. I hope that would be adequate for you. Do you think that's okay? Okay, he says okay, fine. Any other comments? Yeah, you're most welcome, Apratim. So regarding the homeworks, please do name your files in the manner specified. It is very hard for us to deal with in excess of 60-70 files, which are all named differently. Please put your roll number as the first phrase, BMC2021XY, followed by a hyphen, followed by your name, full name, followed by a hyphen, CM1P1, and next time it will be CM1P2. And please do remember to press the submit button well in time before the deadline. But I'm very glad that a very large number of you have submitted the answers for the first homework. They will be graded and you will hear about it. I will also discuss any questions concerning the homework also. Okay, anything else now? Okay, so let us end this meeting and enjoy your lunch and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, great.
Thank you,
you
sir.
very much. Sure.